What is the most ridiculous thing you've had to explain to a grown man/women? I wasn't very successful, but I attempted to explain this to him. Let me set the scene. On top of a mountain in Maui with a tour group watching the sunset, and I hear the guy behind me telling his kids the sunset's in the west, so that's the Pacific Ocean, so that side over there is the Atlantic. I laugh and turn around and acknowledge his hilarious joke. He was not joking. To which I reply, you know this is all the Pacific Ocean. 360 degrees around. He then rolled his eyes and kept talking to his kids. Poor things don't stand a chance. Edit. I've told this story a few times over the years and nobody ever appreciated it. I'm glad I finally found people that do. I had a moment similar to this, except I was the dad. I was walking around a house lottery with my wife, regaling to her all my extensive knowledge of the fancy vehicles there. Of course, I don't actually know that much, but I knew enough to impress her. So eventually we come across this super fancy car with a badge I don't recognize. It's got wings of some form. Kinda reminds me of Chrysler. I tell her all this, explaining that I don't recognize the badge, but it looks like a Chrysler. Must be a Chrysler. Then some dude turns around, looks at me, looks at the car, then looks back at me and says, "It's an Aston Martin." With a look or what I can only describe as a mix of pity and disgust. My wife didn't care that I was wrong, and I played it off like it was no big deal, but secretly he crushed my will to live for a moment. Edit. For the lovely people who are curious, a house lottery is pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. A ticket lottery where the jackpot is $1 million home. Typically there's 3 houses, each of varying values, but one is always around $1 million, and a ton of other prizes you can win. Lesser prizes include things like jet skis, TVs, motorcycles, and the infamous Aston Martin. All the proceeds from the tickets go toward local charities, the most popular being the local children's hospital. That a cow must have a calf in order to produce milk, just like every other mammal. This person disagreed and told me God put cows on this earth to give milk to humans. Sure, but after it has a baby, not required, they can also be chemically induced to lactate. Oh freak, the chemtrails in milk will turn even more frogs gay. Why doesn't the kite just fly away? The string? I'm sure you blew their mind when you explained that without a string it would fall to the ground. I've never thought about this before now. My sister thought rice was made in a factory, like a long piece of pasta that was then chopped into grains of rice. That would be orzo. That is false advertisement suit versus time winner wouldn't hold up, because they're not the ones that told him he was the millionth viewer to a website and promised him a prize. You mean there aren't hot singles in my area?
There probably are. They are just not interested in you.
My mom told me I couldn't text while driving in a school zone. I had to explain to her that only applies to the actual driver, as I texted away in the passenger seat. I had to explain to someone on our flight that there wasn't another little plane trailing us with our luggage when they looked out the window looking for said little plane. When I was tiny, I thought the luggage traveled all the way to the destination in those little cars they used to load/unload. I wondered occasionally why we didn't just ride in those little cars, since they got there at the same time, but I figured it was because the plane held more people. When I was really young, I used to think that the luggage was transported on an underground conveyor belt to your destination, because they would always come out of a conveyor belt onto the carousel at baggage claim. That would be pretty badass now that I think of it. One of my best friends was 21. Gorgeous girl, not new to the dating scene at all. One day she was complaining about her boyfriend to me.
I really like him, but he keeps pressuring me for doggy and I'm just not ready for that.
Me.
Doggy? What's wrong with doggy? Doggy style is great.
You've done doggy.
Me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the big deal is.
You let him stick it up your?
And that's the day I had to explain to my best friend that doggy style is not anal. I don't let her forget. I actually dated the guy version of this, who kept saying anal when he meant doggy. It was really awkward. Had to explain to my 21-year-old son that there's no such thing as ghosts, but he just wouldn't listen. All he kept saying was, "But we were all at your funeral." I had a renter who was 19 and it was her first time living on her own. She didn't get that when you send a letter in the mail, you had to put stamps on the letter. It came back due to no postage. I basically had to confirm to her that she had to do this. Her response: It must be a Canada thing because I never had to do that back home. She is Canadian from Quebec, but her parents sheltered her so much that she couldn't function on her own and thought Quebec and Canada were two different countries. That United Kingdom and United States of America is not the same place just because it has United in front of it. I was 20 years old and covering the reception desk at a mid-sized law firm on maybe the 14th or 15th floor of a high-rise building. This attorney was apparently good at her job, from what I understood of her reputation. I didn't know her well, but this story often makes me wonder about smart and smart. On this day, as she exited the elevator on her return from lunch, she decided to voice what seemed to be a puzzle that stumped her for a very long time. I don't understand this building. Why is it, when I enter the elevator facing away from the lobby, I exit facing the lobby on the floor above? It's like the elevator turns around. I stared at her for a few seconds, contemplating time, space, creation, and the giant salary differential between our two positions, before I spoke the last words I'd ever say to her. Mom, you turn around to face the doors once you get into the elevator. You're facing the lobby when the elevator starts to move. She went out of her way to avoid me after that. I was flying to Australia and a girl I met in the airport asked me if I was worried about crossing the equator. I said no. Why? And she said, well, the plane flips upside down, aren't you concerned it will crash? I couldn't even begin to explain that you should not wear your eclipse glasses while driving around during the solar eclipse. I wouldn't explain it. I'd just tell them to put them on before leaving the house. They won't be able to make it to the car. I know an attorney who is, so far as I can tell, excellent at his job. He's just terrible at basically everything else, to the extent that I'm sometimes amazed he can tie his own shoes, or even remember to tie his shoes, for that matter. I used to hang out with one of my co-workers. Many times while driving in traffic, she turned on her car lights every time she had to abruptly push the brakes behind another driver. She is a kind type of person, so my first thought was that she was trying to be polite and never push the klaxon. Instead, she was flashing her car lights to get the other driver's attention. One day I noticed that she was flashing lights to almost every other driver that we encounter. When I asked her what she was doing, it happens to be that she did not know that tail lights turned on every time you push the brakes, and she was trying to turn them on by turning on the front lights. Haha, she is 27. Where the P comes out of a lady, I'm a dude, she was 33. Edit. The conversation between me and this lady took place 5 years ago. I don't remember how it started. I have repeatedly tried and failed to explain to my co-worker to not eat rotting meat. She'll leave chicken out on the counter all day to defrost, cook the chicken, and then leave the cooked chicken out on the counter for a week and pick at it here and there. She is out with food poisoning at least once a week. I've never met someone who throws up as much as her and wasn't bulimic. She will eat her breakfast at 4 PM after it's sitting on her desk all day. Eggs with cheese and mayo that she picked up at 7 in the morning. Then she'll call in sick the next day. I have shown her YouTube videos of bacteria growing, sent her articles about the dangers of E. coli. She won't listen. She ate potato salad that was sitting in a hot trunk for 24 hours. She said it was liquidy and tasted weird, but she doesn't like how refrigerated foods taste. One day, when she is paralyzed from botulism, I guess I can say I told you so? What in the ever-loving frig? This one bugs me. I worked in kitchens for years and ended up with a phobia of spoiled foods. Sometimes I won't even reheat takeout I had the night before. I know that's insane. GAHHH. Edit. Years not year. As someone eating some 4-day-old reheated pizza, that is pretty insane. Edit. I own a fridge and use it. I once got into a screaming match with someone because she didn't believe fish aren't mammals. I once had to explain to someone that fish were animals. According to him, fish are just fish. There's animal, vegetable, mineral, and apparently fish. That human babies aren't born with their eyes stuck shut like kittens. He asked me if my 3-week-old daughter's eyes had opened yet. He was asking about the mind's eye, but clearly you haven't been taught these secrets. To a 28-year-old female native Californian whose first and only language is English, that it's a vagina and not a virgina. Should have told her it's pronounced vagina. To an office junior postgraduate in engineering, after checking his work, in the English language, if a word starts with a Q, It is almost always followed with a you, him.
Oh yeah, what about Quasar?
Defiant smug stare, knee, sigh. You can open the photocopier to get blank paper out of it, you know. You don't have to keep photocopying that one blank page you keep carrying around with you. I used to copy nothing at my previous job because it required marginally less effort than opening the drawer. When my boss asked me to cut it out, I started referring to the copy machine as the paper dispenser. He didn't think it was as funny as I did. It should also be noted, as I found out later, that the machine was a lease and we were paying per copy. That contrary to her belief, islands are in fact not floating like big rubber boats. She was asking how with the wind and currents the islands still maintained their position without roaming the oceans like rocky icebergs. Edit. Close the bracket. A member of Congress once thought the same thing and was worried that adding troops to a military base on Guam would cause it tip over. To be fair, though, he was on an experimental hepatitis C medication at the time, and it was messing with his head. I'm ashamed to say I thought Antarctica was just composed solely of ice with no land mass, just floating around, and had to Google it after a discussion with a friend. Not my brightest moment. Thank you for watching. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon through the link in the description. If the video slapped, be sure to hit that thumbs up and subscribe for videos every single day. See you tomorrow.